The Hollow Kingdom by Clare B. Dunkle. Starlight, Chapter 2.
"Oh, scat, Salem," scolded Agatha, waving her big hands. "Such a nuisance you are, really. Go on." The men walked away, heading towards the horses. A small boy came out of the shadows to throw wood on the fire. Kate thought she saw a beard on his face as she turned to look at her. "Just the trick of the light, perhaps, or nerves. Enough of this." Emily stepped towards the shadows, coaxing, "Salem." Kate caught her by the arm and pulled her around, turning to the old woman. "Thank you so much for the fortune," she began firmly. "But what—" "Oh, I know all about it, dears," Agatha interrupted kindly. "Two pretty girls lost on a wild night, scared and tired, looking for the way home. You let old Agatha take care of that. We'll take you home. Don't worry. Can't have you out in a storm like this. Nope. And the only question is who will take whom. Let's see, where did they go? What's your name, dear? Kate? And who will take Kate home, eh?" The taller gentleman was leading his horse, a large grey hunter that any gentleman will be proud to own. Kate noticed that the man limped slightly. That, along with the high shoulder. Old age? His posture was unaffected, and he carried himself with dignity. He couldn't be old. He laughed like a young man, and when he spoke, his voice was not an old man's voice. It was rich and pleasant, naturally commanding. "Don't worry, Agatha. I'll take your Kate home, of course." Amused and tolerant. Amused at what? The old woman? Their silliness in getting lost? "Oh, Merrick!" breathed Agatha delightedly, turning her twinkling black eyes on him. Kate felt again that sense of unease. Why the delight and excitement over a simple, good-hearted gesture? The man brought his horse up to her wordlessly and turned to check the saddle. She could see nothing but a black cloak. Good cloth, Aunt Prim would say. Expensive, generously cut. Big gloved hands pulling down the stirrup. Kate looked more closely. The right hand had 6 fingers. "Wait," she stammered. You don't know where we live. How can you promise to take us home if you don't know where we live?" The man paused for a fraction of a second, then continued his work without looking up. She turned quickly, hoping to see a surprised look in Agatha's face, hoping to find some answer to the riddle she was facing.
But Emily blurted out helpfully, "Yes, we live in a Hollow Hill Lodge. Do you know where that is? Are we very far from there?"
"Of course we know where you live, dears," replied Agatha with a chuckle. "Do you think anyone in this country doesn't know of the pretty girls come to live with the 2 old ladies up in the forest? We've not got much to gossip over around here. Now let's see. Merrick, shouldn't Theda take the little one along? Such a respective nature, such pluck." "I think so," replied the amused, amiable voice. "It's probably for the best. So, ready?" And he turned to Kate, putting out his hand to boost her up onto the horse. Emily was stroking the horse's neck delightfully. He was far finer than any at the hall. "No," said Kate, stepping back and treading on her sister's foot. I prefer to walk, thank you." A silence swept across the group. "Oh, Kate!" Emily gasped. The rider dropped his hands slowly and seemed to stare down at her from beneath his hood. He was almost a head taller than she was. "Really," he said distinctly, all amusement gone from that commanding voice. His manner was beyond Claude. It was glacial. Kate forced herself to hold up her head and face him as the blood rushed through her cheeks in a tingling wave. She wasn't sure why she had said what she said, but she would not be faced down now by strangers. Something was wrong here. She knew it. She refused to be a fool for them. "Yes," she replied as calmly and formally as she could. "Please lead my sister and me to the Hollow Hill Lodge, where we live. If you do, we will be very grateful. I hope we are not far from the lodge, because we do not wish to try your patience too long." The hooded man continued to stare at her for a long moment. Then he gave a short laugh. "Well, well, how intriguing! No," he continued firmly over Agatha's spluttered protest, "we will certainly humor the cautious young woman. Thedar, I'll not need you. I believe 1 horse is sufficient to point out the way." He swung up into the saddle. "Now, shall we begin our walk?" he added to the girls. "Or, that is," he went on, bending towards Emily, "I assume you prefer to walk too?" "I do not," said Emily decidedly, glaring at her sister. She caught the rider's arm and let herself be swung up before him. "Em!" shouted Kate, panicked, but it was too late. He settled her little sister comfortably and put the horse into a plodding walk. Kate stood for a second, hands shaking, unsure what she expected. Then she had to scramble after them. The darkness pressed in around them as they left the bonfire behind. Lightning flickered and flashed. Mark's good humor seemed to have returned, and he soon had Emily telling him all about life at the lodge. Stumbled along at the horse's flanks, trying to keep up. She felt like a complete fool. "So your name is M. That's a letter, isn't it?" he asked. This notion caught Emily's fancy powerfully, and she couldn't stop giggling. "My name is Emily Winslow, but my sister calls me M. Or maybe she calls me M. I wonder what it stands for. Isn't it funny how humans name a child one thing in order to call it something else? So many names. It's like a game. M's a new one. Kate. Now that's a name everyone knows." They were walking through a field of weeds. The weeds were up to Kate's waist, and she kept slipping on the long stalks. "Miss Winslow," she muttered, through clenched teeth. But Merrick heard her. He must have very good ears. "Oh, hello, Kate. Are you all right down there? Are you enjoying your walk? So, Miss Winslow, how convenient. You have one name for friends and another for enemies." Emily giggled again. He certainly was making a hit with her. "I do not have a name for enemies," Kate answered sharply. "Polite society dictates the use of a person's name." She emphasized polite. She just couldn't help herself. "I am Kate within my family, and Miss Winslow to strangers." "Oh, good, Kate," came the cheerful reply. Really, this was intolerable. "I can keep calling you Kate and still be part of polite society. I'm family, you know. Hugh Roberts of Hollow Hills is a relative of mine. His grandfather and my mother were cousins. Their fathers were brothers." "Really?" exclaimed Emily excitedly. "I didn't know we had any more relatives." Neither did Kate. She felt her mortification could not go further. Perhaps this man had been on his way to visit his cousin. He must have known all about the 2 new wards. And now everyone would know how absurdly she had acted. But why had he been so rude? Why the hood, the wordless meeting? Really, it was his fault that she had made such a colossal blunder. She was upset to the point of tears. "I'm afraid if you're Mr. Roberts' relative, you're no relative of mine," she snapped, before realizing what she said. "Oh, no! After keeping quiet all this time!" "What?" demanded Emily. "And really?" exclaimed her tormentor. He reined in the horse and turned to face her. "What do you mean you're not a Roberts? I thought you were visiting your great aunts." "Oh, Em, I'm sorry," faltered Kate, looking up through the darkness at the pale smudge that was all she could distinguish of her sister's face. "It's old news, really. No one minds. Our great-grandmother was adopted into the family, that's all." There was a pause. Then Merrick urged his horse back into a walk. "I can't say I'm sorry," he thought thoughtfully. "New blood is very good for the hill. But which great-grandmother are you talking about?" Thoroughly cowed, Kate told the story of Elizabeth's adoption, Adele's death, and their own consequent arrival, but she was rather scandalized when Merrick laughed at all the wrong places. "That's not how my mother told the story, Kate," he said carelessly. "I wouldn't believe everything that fool Roberts tells you." Emily snorted delightfully, but Kate was bewildered. "Do you mean you think he lied about the adoption?" she asked, struggling along by the horse's side. "Oh, no. That's the only thing I do believe. But what a thing to tell you. Poor Kate," he teased. "I don't think Roberts likes you at all." "If he calls me Kate one more time," thought Kate, "I'll do something horrible." Then she thought about the several horrible things she had already done that evening, and subsided into misery again. "We don't like him either," confided Emily heatedly. "He's just hateful, with all his long words, and his Hollow Hill, and his linguistic persistence of ignorance." "What?" The writer seemed highly amused. "He's been explaining everything for you, has he? Tell me, what did he say about the hill?" Emily went into a somewhat confused rendition of their cousin's speech on the place names, and this time Merrick laughed at all the right places. "Well, letter M," he announced, "almost every bit of that is wrong. Completely and thoroughly wrong. Pig-headed. Would you like to know why it's really called Hollow Lake?" "Yes!" exclaimed Emily. "It's called Hollow Lake because it's hollow." There was a momentary pause. "Now what does that mean?" Emily burst out. "It's just hollow, that's all." "How is it supposed to be hollow?" demanded Emily. "You're just being silly." "No," the man replied pleasantly. "I assure you, I never lie."